security company,
Veritas.
right?
No, Veritas Group.
Oh,
Building authentic donor relationships for charities. And his big topic of discussion today, his name is Richard Perry. He's a friend of one of the main guys in the Rotary Club. I forget what the gentleman's name is because I'm still learning everybody.
Yeah.
But he was giving a speech on charities, and most people don't follow up and thank their donors enough. And that's what they work on is thanking the donors. And I said, I raised my hand and I said, I got this little problem. I don't give to charity because I want to thank you. It's nice if you get a thank you, but I give for the psychology of giving like everybody else. You give to feel good because you did something good with your money. The problem I have is once I give it, I don't know if it's used properly or if it's really used in the right way. So I said, look, for example, I go into Publix, and every time I go into Publix supermarket, they're trying to hit me up for a donation. And they say, oh, would you buy this bag of food for the poor people to eat? And I said, I would gladly buy it if you'd sell it to me at the price that you bought it for. So if Publix, if you're not trying to make a profit off of my giving, I would gladly give you double the amount that you're asking. But you don't do that. You're trying to make a profit off of charity, which is a scam. And I'm sorry, but I don't want to be scammed.
Okay.
And then I quietly leave, the girl at the counter like,
right, because
what are you talking about? Like, doesn't even get it. Or when Walgreens does it. Would you like to send a candy bar to the war veterans in Afghanistan? Of course I'd like to help the war veterans. I'm all for helping people that serve this country. Do I think that we should get cacao from Africa, send it to Hershey, Pennsylvania, and then they package it up and send it to Florida, and you're going to send that candy bar from Florida at retail price over to Afghanistan? It doesn't make sense to me, right? I mean, there's candy in Africa, so we can just go buy it there if we worked properly with the money. So I said, it's all about the story of the tokens. I said, I really get what you're saying about you should be appreciative of when people give you something. A thank you is basic. It's you either have manners or you don't.
Right.
If you're a charity and you don't say thank you, you don't have manners, your mom didn't teach you well, okay? You probably shouldn't get anybody else's money, okay? The number one thing is you say thank you. The second thing that you need to do is handle that money like in Matthew when they were talking about the talents. One servant was given 5 talents, the other servant was given 2, and the other servant was given 1. So I was very loud in my statement about this because I see it happen so often.
Right.
And I said, the way I see most charities operate is instead of actually taking the 5 talents, which is the $1 million that they get from a donor, and turning that into another $1 million in 2 years, and another $1 million in 2 years, or another $1 million in 2 years, they take that $1 million and they spend it as fast as they can because that's what they think the donor wanted them to do. Or that's what they told the donor, we're gonna do some work with your money, and they think the faster that they spend that money, the better job they're doing. When in fact, if there's a impediment to raising another $1 million the next year, or if what they're basing their fundraising on is an event like a festival and it's weather dependent, if there's a hurricane or a storm, and that money doesn't come in the next year, then they can't help those people the next year. Whereas if they just had waited and invested that money wisely, like the person with the 5 talents, instead of the person with the 1 talent who put it in the ground, they can continue their organization to do their good work for a long period of time. Whereas if you get that $1 million in and then it goes out really quick, even if you say thank you, it's gone. And then you have to go back to the well and say, can I have another $1 million, please, sir? Can I have another $1 million, please, sir? And when somebody gives you the $1 million, they may have 100, but that may have been their $1 million they wanted you to use wisely. And if you use it up so quickly, even if you gave it to Haiti or to Housing Habitat for Humanity, I was looking at, and I know you love Habitat for Humanity, I was in the bank yesterday, which is Mutual of Omaha. I was in Mutual of Omaha just yesterday and it said, 96% of all of our funds are used to build houses. And I was thinking to myself, okay, that's good. But what if 100% of the funds were used to invest and 100% of those profits or 96% of those gains were used to buy the lumber, to buy the windows, to buy those things? Think of exponentially if we did the math. Just if we just showed what if we just did the math and showed our little Habitat for Humanity, how much money if they just, okay, I'm sorry, but you can't help build any homes this year. We're going to put a freeze on it. Everything you raise is going to go into a fund for 1 year. Whatever you have at the end of that 1 year, The next year, you can keep adding to that fund if you want, but even if it was just for 1 year of funds, and you had the income from that, it would allow you to do so much more with using that, let's say 30 to 40% probably that they could really achieve, because we're doing 50%, but there are costs involved with that. But let's say their real take home could be about 35, maybe 30%. 30% that they can actually use, right? Minus fees and minus transaction costs and all that stuff, okay? But 30% of $1 million, that's $300,000 a year, every year.
Every year.
And they still have the $1 million.
That's the key. Yeah.
And that $1 million is constantly working for them. So if they did the same thing the next year, then they have $2 million. So the next year operating budget is $600,000 instead of $300,000. If they did it in the third year, they're to the $1 million. And then they have exactly as much as they would have had if they wouldn't have spent the $1 million all in one chunk. And all they had to do was be patient for 3 years. And they could help so much more people, and they could keep
generating $300 a year.
Right.
That's the thing.
Keep generating $300. And if the donations didn't come in the next year,
Right.
like there was a crisis or there was a problem,
Economic, downturn, people don't give as much.
people don't give as much.
You
Anything
gotta
can happen.
You gotta stop.
They could have bad publicity. Anything can happen in this world. What if their CEO does something stupid? Should their whole organization be punished for that? Well, in a lot of cases it is. If you look at United Way and some organizations like that, even Salvation Army, they publish the salary of the guy, and then everyone's like, well, I'm not giving to them. But whatever their problem is, shouldn't be dependent on PR or weather or the economy. If they actually build their own economy by investing the money they're given properly, by giving their 5 tokens and turning it into 5 tokens, instead of burying it in the ground.
And not getting any. So what did the fellow say? And how did he answer? I mean, you asked
Well, he said, well, there's, some companies that do endowments, some do. It's not widely popular because they're not trained. They're just, generally a charity is a guy,
old school. Yeah.
not even an old school. A charity is a guy who says, I see a problem, I'm going to start a charity. And then they think, well, that's my company now. And they probably have no experience in running companies. That's why they have a charity to begin with. And whether they're, then they hire consultants to come in to help them on the reporting. Then they hire consultants to help them come in on the communications.
Right.
Then they hire all these things, right? Everything's like then.
By the time they're done,
By the time they're done,
20 cents on the dollar left over.
20 cents on the dollar left over, when that's all fine if it's paid for out of the income.
Right.
Because then you still keep, and if, honestly, if I give an organization $1 million, and they can show me on paper, I've invested this $1 million wisely. We haven't just helped the whole world. Next year, our plan is to use your money and spend $300,000 of that $1 million that we've got in income. Your $1 million is still there.
Right.
Your $1 million as an investor is still safe and sound, and we're going to use that the following year. If you'd like to donate another $1 million, okay. But it's not obligatory, or we're not expecting you to do that because we've used what we've been given wisely. Now, if that is done, that is going to go 100 times further than if you send them a nice card that says, thank you, we just spent all your money and we built somebody a house. Now, if you send them this thing that says, we've taken your $1 million, we put it into a fund, a charity fund, that obviously we could help them manage or something like that. They're getting that $300,000 a year. They can show them the report. We took this $300,000 a year, and your $1 million, instead of only building 10 homes, over the course of 10 years, we're going to be able to build 50 or 100 homes.
Right.
Now that to me is what God meant, or Matthew meant, or the Bible meant, by using your talents appropriately. And I don't think that these charities right now, they're not doing it properly.
And the other thing, it's not in their rules or whatever you call it, their organization charter.
Well, then they're going to need to change their charter because they just don't know enough, and they don't understand the finances involved. Because it was just a guy with an idea; he wanted to help people. That's good. We all want to help people, but there's a smart way to help people, and there's a dumb way to help people. If you go out and you get $1 million, you spend it all in the first month, and then you can't operate in month 2, 3, 4, and 5. There's a problem, and whether that's year 2, 3, or 4, or 5, we don't know. We don't know how well they are managing it, but you see a lot of these charities, like, how did that charity go out of business? Or how did they had this money donations? Because you can see a lot of that stuff online now. How much money went in, how much money went out. And it's just a matter of maybe wrong place, wrong time, and their finance guys,
A
they're
lot of
yeah, but a lot of
corruption.
Yeah.
That's the other part.
well,
You
we
really
can't
don't-
stop that.
No,
we
no,
can't
right.
stop that. What we can do is help them make resource of what they're giving.
Right.
And me as a donor, I feel much more comfortable that my money will be there and keep growing to help a lot more people than you just do it one time, hope it works, and if it doesn't work, then you don't know what's happening. Then they're gonna have to come to you again and say, hey, we need more money, we need more money, we need more money.
That's the way it is.
And if we have it, great. But if we don't have it at that time,
Right.
we're gonna have to say, oh, sorry, and then I feel bad. But if you tell me in year 2, so if I give you in year 1, year 2, I'm sorry, I can't help you. Well, guess what your money's doing in year 2? Guess what your money's doing in year 3? It's much better for donor relations to have a long-term plan like that than to have a I call it a build and burn strategy, where you just build them up, tell them what you're doing, and then you burn all the cash. You build up the cash, you burn all the cash. And that's throwing your talents in the ground. So I really think that by establishing the right fund, and we just had a conversation this morning, Chris and I did, with UBS. And UBS is possibly interested in working with us on they're interested to see a little bit more about what we have. So I really think that if we come out with a product for charities with UBS's stamp on it, because we're just Wall Street winning. But if we're behind the scenes and they endorse it and say, yep, we're gonna put
They're
the thing on
kind of
it,
the management company, they have the money or whatever.
then we can help a lot of people.
Right, you got a credible.
They're the management and accounting
in the
people.
background, yeah.
Yep, they're gonna be the back office for us.
That would be very beneficial.
So I'm working on inking that deal,
That
Ron.
would be super, because then we get over that hurdle of all that regulation and all that
Everything.
other problem that
Yeah.
exists, saying, yeah, if you get a relationship like that.
Yeah. And then they can have each charity their own fund, and then those
Right.
sub-organizations, like Rotary, for example. Rotary has 33,000. Well, we could have one major Rotary
Right, right.
fund where the Rotary International gets their money. They're going to make more money from the fund than they do from their
All
dues.
the people, yeah, right.
And then the companies underneath it,
Each get a piece of it, depending on what
each get a
they
piece,
donate, right?
depending on
It's
what
all
they
percent,
donated.
yeah.
And it's all percentages.
Yeah.
UBS handles it all. Boom. We're out of the picture. All we do is put your formulas that in your math that goes back to NASA, goes back to now,
right. Put it
put it into work.
Put it into work for them.
And really change the world. Because, Ron, I love the idea of giving a percentage of what we make to Habitat for Humanity. But the way I see it,
Right, I understand.
I don't think that they're managing it properly. And until they get to where I say, okay, and maybe we need to help them with formulate a plan. Maybe we need to give them a little plan and say, hey guys, if you just did it like this over year 2, 3, 4, and 5, we could build so many more homes if you just didn't build a home for a year or didn't build a home.
Well,
for
not quite as many. In other words, start funding.
Take 50%.
Right, get it
50%,
started.
put it into the fund.
Right, because in 2 years you got enough to get back to where you were.
Exactly.
That's the key to
But they have these short-term goals of
Yeah,
like,
right.
let's go out and give the newspapers and say we built 22 homes this year. Great, you helped 22 people. But next year you can only help 22 people. But if you did the rule
or
of 70,
less if you don't have enough coming in. That's
Exactly.
the problem. You can maybe build only 15.
yeah. But with the rule of 72, if they were doubling that money every 2 years, like we're
Right,
doing, or in
right.
this case it would be every 3 years
3
with our
years,
fees.
yeah.
Every 3 years, they're doubling it. So
Great
they can
idea.
be unstoppable and have continuity in what they're doing without the worry of the investor turnover, because that's so huge.
Right, the donor turnover.
Well, yeah.
That's the whole.
I see them as investors because
Yeah, right.
Because when I work in Habitat for Humanity, I'm investing in a company that they're going to do what we want. I'm not expecting a return other than
The gratitude and seeing the people enjoy the new house. That's the
the
gratitude.
return is them doing the job.
Absolutely.
But if they just go out and do the job so quickly without thinking about the consequences of the long term down the road, and I think they could even do more. So if you actually had like an electricity bill fund or a food bill fund that after you build the house, and I know everybody has to go through whatever, but I'm sure some of the people that they're in Habitat for Humanity for a reason, right? So they're borderline people that
Right,
they may encounter a problem later on down the road. So what is to once you get them in the house, then will we just drop them? Do we just drop them? So there could be if you
a little more support available if they needed it in dire times. Something came up.
But all that, it's just a matter of money, right? Because of course they'd want to do that, or
Right.
they could just employ another sister organization to
help them
drop
out.
food off if they need it, or
Right.
pay their electricity bill if something happened, because that happens to a lot of people because generally people
idea.
with
I'm gonna
Habitat
give
for
Lisa a
Humanity,
call. I know Lisa over at Habitat. I'm gonna
Yeah.
bring her in.
we should sit down and talk with her and say,
Sure.
Lisa, there's
You're
probably a
not
better way we can do it.
Right, there's opportunity for them
Yeah.
to
Because-
magnify the number of homes they're building if they think
Yeah.
about it.
I remember the guy you got the house for at Publix, right? The guy from the
Right.
deli,
Mhm.
okay? The deli job, I mean, he may have it for the rest of his life. But some other company may buy Publix and kick him out,
That's
okay?
true.
And then he doesn't have a job, or he may hurt his arm, and
Right,
you
right,
know,
yeah.
there's all sorts of things that can
Yeah,
hurt your.
right, right.
You're like, if you cut your finger, you can't slice meat. You know, I mean, there's certain things you can't do. You know what I'm saying?
That's
so,
right.
so it's great to give them a home, and it's great that they have, they help him build it, and it's great that they
Right.
have, a background enough that they're going to be able to
support the
it.
home. Right. That's.
But what if they can't? They have no
fall,
parachute.
right, no fall.
There's
No
no
parachute, no
parachute
parachute. You're right,
where
no parachute.
if you manage this money properly and you had fund and then a separate fund, you could have a light bill fund or have a gas bill fund or
Extra
have a
support when needed.
repair bill. So what happens, a lot of these homes they build also are in the middle of the woods, okay? You know that this past year I had some real estate issues where I was trying to buy $1 million home in the woods. That $1 million home in the woods needed $200,000 worth of repairs because it's in the middle of the woods. And a lot of these homes are building up in Naples. The land is cheaper in the middle of the woods.
Absolutely.
So the environment, all these things take what portion of that money then is then earmarked to help them with
Used for,
repairs.
Maintenance down the
Yeah.
road.
So what happens when they need a new roof in 10 years? Who's going to do that for them? Those kind of things.
Home ownership. Yeah.
They're part of home ownership, and while we hope that they get on their feet and they
That's
can
right.
take care of it themselves,
Yeah. Sometimes.
but then what about the investment that we just did? So we just bought this guy a house, and he fell in hard times. 10 years down the road, needs a new roof. It doesn't have a new roof, so the rain comes in, ruins the house. The whole house falls to nothing, and our investment went kaput.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So those are the kind of things that if we actually use what our talents, what God gave us wisely,
Mhm.
that we could actually do a lot more with what we're given. Because I don't think they're doing enough with what they're given. And everyone says, well, I'm doing everything I can. Yes, you're doing everything you can, but maybe there's just a better way.
There's a way. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Great idea.
So.
I'll give you-